Look closely at this man's face. He is on his hands and knees, the damp earth staining his palms. He is bearing the weight of a young woman in heavy, blood-red velvet, sitting side-saddle across his spine. She holds no whip. She needs no leather reins. She steers him entirely by his grey beard. Her posture is rigid. Her expression? Utterly vacant. And who is this broken, humiliated man? It's Aristotle, the greatest mind of the ancient world, the man who mapped the stars, tutored Alexander the Great, and quite literally defined human reason. Yet here, the architect of Western logic has been reduced to a literal beast of burden. Painted by Lucas Cranach the Elder in 1530, notice how the artist doesn't hide this shameful act in a dark, suffocating room. He places this total surrender right out in the open. The serene, sweeping landscape, the peaceful town, and the bright blue sky in the background only make the bizarre spectacle in the foreground feel even more jarring. Aristotle's towering intellect is dead. His dignity is crushed under her velvet dress. But here is the truly terrifying part. This painting was the vanguard of a massive, dark obsession sweeping across Northern Europe. A cultural paranoia designed to warn powerful men about the one force they believed could utterly destroy them. At just 22 by 14 inches, the panel forces you to step close. It demands an uncomfortable intimacy. Cranach builds this bizarre dynamic using violently saturated, expensive pigments, isolating the figures against the landscape. The woman holding the reins is Phyllis, and she is dressed for war. Her clothing is a weapon. She wears a massive, flat crimson hat weighed down by heavy ostrich plumes. Her hair is entirely bound and locked away inside a rigid, woven gold halber. A stiff, heavily jeweled collar secures a whisper-thin, transparent, pleated hemmed tightly around her throat. Over this fragile, see-through chemise, she is draped in heavy, twisted ropes of bronze and silk cord, pulling across her shoulders like a ceremonial harness. Her sleeves are pure aggression. They directly mirror the brutal, militaristic Landsknecht fashion of the era, constructed from thick, padded segments of dark red velvet, aggressively paned and slashed to expose the lining beneath. They are engineered to maximize her physical width and dominance. Deep, heavy pleats of red velvet cascade over his flanks, completely swallowing his lower half. The sheer geometric rigidity of her opulent garments visually crushes the soft, vulnerable flesh of Aristotle beneath her. She is impenetrable. He is utterly exposed. To the left, etched into the bark of a tree trunk, Cranach seals the trap. He paints his signature, a black, winged serpent gripping a ruby ring in its jaws. Granted to him by royalty, it served as the elite trademark of his workshop. But lurking within that little dragon is a darker symbol. Kronos, the god of time, quietly mocking the fragile, temporary nature of human wisdom. Cranach captured the physical humiliation of this collapse perfectly. However, the true origin of this specific, terrifying nightmare predates the painter by 300 years, buried deep within the moral panic of medieval clerics. While Cranach provided the chilling visual, the core of this nightmare was forged 300 years earlier. A 13th century French cleric named Jacques de Vitry weaponized this exact tale in his sermons, terrifying his congregations with the raw, destructive power of lust. The premise is a lethal trap. Aristotle, the great intellect, warns his powerful pupil Alexander the Great to stay away from a seductive courtier named Phyllis. When Phyllis discovers his interference, she orchestrates a flawless, humiliating revenge. She waits for the early morning, knowing the old scholar is locked in his study. She steps into the quiet garden directly beneath his open window. She is barefoot. Her hair hangs loose and unbound. She wears only a thin, sheer linen chemise, letting the damp morning dew cling to the fabric. She sings a soft, captivating melody, bending low to gather flowers, deliberately exposing the bare flesh of her legs to his gaze. It is pure psychological warfare. She slowly, methodically shatters his concentration. She weaponizes her own vulnerability, wearing down his rigid logic until the architect of human reason is completely consumed by raw, primal desire. When the desperate scholar finally breaks and begs for her touch, she names her price. He must get down on his hands and knees and let her ride him like a horse. As this story infected Europe, it mutated. Early French versions kept the tone polite, with Aristotle shrugging off the humiliation by claiming love conquers all. The German tradition, however, turned the fable brutal. In those retellings, the humiliation becomes a public spectacle. The queen and her entire court watch from the garden as Phyllis relentlessly degrades the crawling scholar, forcing him to flee into exile, utterly broken. This belonged to a relentless artistic cycle depicting history's strongest, wisest men utterly annihilated by female figures. Samson shorn by Delilah, Holofernes decapitated by Judith, and here, Aristotle reduced to a beast. In the eyes of Renaissance humanists, female sexuality was a terrifying weapon. Notice how Phyllis looks directly out of the panel, locking eyes with you, the viewer. She is daring. She is dangerous. Cranach had a much darker, hidden motive for choosing this exact subject. He weaponized this image to execute a ruthless theological assassination on behalf of a very close, very famous, personal friend. Cranach operated at the absolute epicenter of the Protestant Reformation. From his base in Wittenberg, armed with his own printing press and his authority as burgomaster, he served as the ultimate visual propagandist for his most intimate friend, Martin Luther. Luther was waging total ideological warfare against the Catholic Church. At the time, the Catholic intellectual foundation rested heavily on scholasticism, a massive theological system built squarely on the philosophy of Aristotle. Luther absolutely despised this connection. To the radical reformer, human reason was fundamentally broken by original sin. He viewed logic as a direct enemy of faith, famously calling reason a whore that seduces the mind away from God. By 1517, Luther declared Aristotle's ethics the ultimate enemy of grace, demanding that true theology must completely abandon the Greek philosopher. The bizarre legend of Phyllis and Aristotle handed Cranach the perfect weapon. This painting is a targeted, brutal attack on Catholic scholasticism. It visually manifests the total, humiliating failure of human logic. The message is devastatingly clear. If Aristotle, the supreme architect of earthly wisdom, could be reduced to a crawling animal by basic biological instinct, then his philosophy can never be trusted with your eternal salvation. Intellectual arrogance is futile. Reason is entirely defenseless against human depravity. Cranach masterfully embedded this theological warfare into oil and wood for the elite courts of Saxony. But if you think this single 22-inch panel is the only time the greatest mind of the ancient world be humiliated like this, you are dead wrong. This painting is just the tip of a massive, bizarre iceberg. The humiliation of Aristotle was far too potent to be contained to a single canvas. In 1515, the Dutch master Lucas van Leyden gouged the narrative into cheap, mass-produced woodcuts. He etched deep, agonizing lines into Aristotle's face, capturing the sheer, wide-eyed panic of a genius realizing he is trapped. German artist Hans Baudon pushed the degradation to its absolute limit, forcing a crude iron equestrian bit directly into the screaming philosopher's mouth. Engravers slipped this dark psychological warfare into average households, turning the catastrophic collapse of Western logic into widespread domestic satire. The mockery penetrated three-dimensional space. Craftsmen cast the crawling genius in heavy bronze to create aquamanilia, hollow vessels used for washing hands at aristocratic banquets. A powerful nobleman would grip a heavy bronze monument of intellectual collapse just to pour clean water. The infection even breached the most heavily guarded architecture of the era. Woodcarvers secretly embedded the scene into the undersides of folding seats inside cathedral choir stalls. Directly beneath the resting bodies of celibate priests, the image of Aristotle's catastrophic failure waited in the dark, a mocking, hidden threat inside the holiest of spaces. Wealthy noblewomen even stored their jewelry in luxury ivory boxes carved with the exact same humiliation. The destruction of the ancient world's greatest mind was carved into the very physical fabric of Renaissance life. Cranach took a century of this relentless, viral mockery, distilled it, and painted the flawless, terrifying apex of the joke. He permanently nailed the coffin shut on Catholic scholasticism, proving with absolute, chilling certainty that the sharpest intellect in human history was completely defenseless against the raw, intoxicating allure of a beautiful woman. By the way, if you'd like a museum-quality reproduction of this painting, you can find it over at our store, viewcrypt.com. The link is in the pinned comment below. See you in the next one.